Down to our last team in the CAA Football 12 Teams in 12-Day Series presented by Geico. I'm Bobby Broyles along with Tim McDonald. We saved the preseason favorite for last, talking, of course, about the Villanova Wildcats. The conversation about Nova obviously starts with quarterback John Robertson, who enters the final season of an already legendary career. But, Tim, there's also another guy on the other side of the ball who can't be ignored either.
Yeah, many times in a coaching career, have you had the chance to coach so many great guys? Andy Talley, he's up on the higher echelon of that list right now. You look at a coach who returns not only the Walter Payton Award winner in John Robertson, but a guy who finished second in the Buchanan voting last year for the Defensive Player of the Year.
Yep.
I mean, Don Cherry is a guy who is probably going to get overlooked this year just because John Robertson's on the other side of the ball.
Yep.
I'll start with Robertson, though. The numbers are gaudy. There's no doubt in that, and the expectations are also high, which is insane when you think about a guy who last year proved that he's not just a running quarterback. We saw improvements in his passing game, especially efficiency. John Robertson led the FCS with 181.25 efficiency rating, 35 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and that's not as simple as finding different guys. That's as simple as he made strides to improve as a passer. And I think when you look at his numbers this year, can we say they can get higher? Who knows? After what happened last year, we just don't know. He enters the season really becoming a chance to become the greatest player in Villanova history. It's 3 straight 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He's second all-time in rushing, second all-time in total touchdowns, second all-time in total rushing touchdowns. Again, we know John Robertson has a little bit of a sour mouth. He missed the final game of the season. Of course, there's a playoff loss to Sam Houston State because of a head injury.
Yep.
And we know Don Cherry is coming back. So Andy Talley has the pieces on both sides of the ball. Maybe the most important pieces because they're leaders and because they've played so much football. I'm really excited to see if Villanova can handle these expectations and if these star players can really rally around the other guys on the team as well.
Absolutely. You just feel like the only thing missing in John Robertson's trophy case in his collegiate career has to be a national championship. So we'll see if they can get it done this year. We spoke with John Robertson at CAA Football Media Day, and this is what he had to say about his team contending for a national title.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of expectations, but I think we got to look at it as, like I said, just with my own type of going into the season, like what I think about it. I think we got to just go game by game. So we got UConn. That's the first game. That's all we got to focus on. National championship is a while away. Do I think we're going to be really good? Yes. I think we're going to be very good, and I think that we have a chance. But, we got to get through a whole schedule. And, the CAA is just a great league. Everyone's really good, so.
John will have a talented supporting cast around him in 2015. If the Wildcats want to make a run at a national title, however, we might have to see some new faces step up in key spots.
Yeah, we know Andy Talley's team returns 14 starters, 6 on offense, 8 on defense. But like you said, you lose a guy in Poppy Livers, who was almost a 1,000-yard receiver last year, 9 touchdowns. You lose a guy in Kevin Manangai, who's on the Eagles roster right now, who rushed for 1,000 yards last year. Those are key pieces. Yes, you do have Robertson back, and yes, you do have some other wide receivers who are going to need to step up. We saw a guy last year, towards the end of the season especially, Kevin Gullius is a guy at the wide receiver position who really became an offensive threat. That's a guy who last year only had under 30 catches, but he had 600 yards, averaged over 20 yards per catch. He's going to be huge. You look at Matt Gudzik. Gary Underwood is another guy who was a role player last year. He's probably going to be a starter and one of the guys to lean on offense this year. Offensive line, I think they're going to be okay. I think the biggest question mark for this Villanova team is some of the guys last year who they had so much depth on offense, almost too much depth, because some of these guys this year are going to need to come in and step in right away. Offensively, the biggest concern for them is going to be at the skill position. We know the kicking game was a little bit of a concern last year too. Some question marks certainly, but are there guys that are capable of taking over on offense? Of course, but we're going to see, I guess, if they get thrown into the fire and how they handle it.
Here's head coach Andy Talley on some of the new weapons on offense.
Well, I think Kevin Gullius, our wide receiver from this past year, had the best per catch average on the team, and Kevin will be the go-to guy. But that's a weakness for us right now. We need to groom 2 young players. Lincoln Collins is a guy that needs to step up and play. We have a freshman by the name of Alex Padavani, redshirt freshman. He had a great spring, and I hope he'll step up and play. We also have some good young players at slot. Taurus Phillips, I like a lot. And Ryan Morris, our tight end, I think will be in the mix a little bit more as a pass receiver. So that is an area on offense we need to improve on.
Villanova enters 2015 ranked in the top 5 of both national polls. Let's take a peek at the schedule. You don't want to fast forward all the way to November, but the season-ending matchups against Richmond and James Madison with the conference title possibly at stake are hard not to get excited about.
Yeah, we talked about this with JMU, looking, well, Tim, let's break into the schedule and look all the way at the
All the way
end.
in,
But that really is what we're going to look at for this Villanova team starting out. That home game versus Richmond, it's going to be senior day. There's going to be a lot of emotions for a lot of guys on this Villanova team.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be a huge game. Remember, too, Richmond beat Villanova last year at Richmond. Then, of course, you go to that JMU game. It's going to be the whole week. It's going to be talked about just Vadley versus John Robertson. And if you're a CAA football fan, you're going to be paying attention to these games because there's probably going to be some type of implication for a conference title race.
Absolutely, yep.
The game's going to have a lot of meaning no matter what. Look at Villanova last year. They go to Syracuse to open the season, had a really good chance to win, lose that one in overtime, kind of due to some kicking issues, but you can't blame it all on that.
No.
Villanova has a great shot this year in an FBS game. Every FCS fan across the country is probably going to be watching on Thursday night, September the 3rd, Villanova at UConn. And UConn is the team last year, beat Stony Brook in a game that Stony Brook was in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
It had a chance to win that game. Of course, we all remember 2 years ago when Towson went to UConn and beat them. So UConn, I think, has an idea of what to expect from Villanova. They know who their quarterback is, and they know that Villanova has the caliber to beat this team. UConn's a team last year that only won a couple of games, and of course that was one of their wins was versus Stony Brook. You also look at Villanova's schedule too. You have to remember they play Fordham. Fordham's a very good team. They might not have the same caliber offense as they did last year, but just up and down the schedule. Also, you have that game on Halloween against Maine. That's a nationally televised game. Villanova's schedule sets up nicely, but if there's any team in CAA football, Bob, who opens the year with an FBS team and then a really good Fordham team and isn't worried about it, it's probably Villanova because they know they can handle it. I'm really interested to see the opener, especially versus UConn, because we know how close that Villanova's played. Remember, 2 years ago they played BC well. Last year they lost that Syracuse game. I think there's a lot of unfinished business and a little bit of a sour taste, so that's going to be an awesome game to watch.
Absolutely. Villanova opens its season, like you said, on Thursday night at UConn in a game that can be seen live on SNY and ESPN3. Kickoff is set for 7:30.
You want to know how John Robertson and Don Cherry, two guys who we've talked about a lot today, how they get ready for CAA Football game days? Well, you can now watch that with our latest features on CAA Football's Everyday is Saturday blog at caafootball.wordpress.com.
This concludes our 12 teams and 12-day series, but we're just getting started in 2015. We'll be back here tomorrow for our first episode of This Week in CAA Football, breaking down the opening week of the season. For Tim McDonald, I'm Bobby Broyles. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. on CAAfootball.com.